Thanks for staying on with us. We're talking about Budget 2021 or Belanjawan 2021 that is happening towards the end of this week. Joining us is Theresa Goh of Deloitte, talking about the various ways of the government's challenges and hurdles that they need to overcome, and more importantly, what the everyday person can understand from it. Theresa, how do you think the government can do or can respond to the current needs and the current problems of businesses of today, and perhaps even stimulate the economy?
Okay, I think since I'm from tax, I'm going to talk about certain tax measures that the government can actually think of. So one of them, of course, because everybody's facing cash flow problems, right, from closing of businesses and loss of employment, etc. So alleviating the tax burden of the rakyat, I think, is now paramount. So for the individual, some of the things that can be proposed would actually be tax cuts for at least this year, 2020, and next year, for low income and middle income earners. So we're not the first to do it. Australia and Hong Kong have already made, similar proposals as well. So this is not like really too far-fetched. So I hope the government, would seriously consider tax cuts. Now, the other thing for the individual is, with this new norm and working from home, etc. So we hope that the inland revenue would also give working from home expense relief, right? So give a tax deduction for all the expenses that are incurred by the employees as a result of working from home, like your utility bill, which can be quite a lot actually, and your telecommunication bill. And also tax relief, perhaps for purchasing PPE, personal protection equipment for the taxpayer and his family. So the initial days when we had to buy masks and all that, they were really, really costly down a lot. And for the businesses, I think one of the things that can be done is actually defer tax installment payments. For businesses, with a December year end, for example, you have to pay your taxes ahead upfront, right? So from December, December this year, you're already paying taxes ahead for profits that you are going to earn next year. And our tax law requires that the amount of tax that you pay cannot be less than 85% of the tax that you paid the previous year. Okay, so this is quite onerous for taxpayers during this time, especially if they're struggling with cash flow problems and all that. So deferring the tax installment payment will be one of our suggestions. Another one would be lowering the threshold. Instead of 85%, perhaps maybe look at 50%, right? And when we look at what's been happening during COVID, right, a lot of people, individuals, we see NGOs and all that coming out and helping those who are in need, right? And all these donations, etc. It would be great if the government can provide relief. At the moment, it's only limited to 10% of your income, of your taxable income, right? Only 10%. So if you choose to give more, you don't get a tax deduction. Of course, I mean, if you want to give, we will give, whether we get a tax deduction or not. But it will really help taxpayers, yeah, who want to help contribute iPads or computers to children in those villages, yeah, that do not have this facility and cannot participate in the digital learning. So I think that's one area that the government can think of doing as well. I think the other important thing is, because many businesses are actually making losses this year, so it would be good if the government can allow a carry back of the losses to the past, maybe 3 years, and extend the carry forward of losses. So for carry forward of losses, we are only allowed 7 years. But with the pandemic, there'll be a few years where businesses will be making losses. So they're not going to be able to utilize their losses brought forward. So we are saying that instead of 7 years, perhaps extend it, to 10 years. Now, the carry back of the losses is really important and will help taxpayers with their cash flow. So for example, for the last 3 years, they've been paying taxes of 10 million, right? And this year they made a loss of 5 million. So if the government allows the carry back of the losses, they can take this 5 million loss to offset against the 10 million profits that they made in prior years. Okay, so which means that they will actually end up with a tax refund of 5 million. So that will be really helpful to taxpayers. So I think another area is actually group relief. Group relief, at the moment, if you have one company in the group that's making a loss and other companies that are making profits, you can apply the group relief, but it's very limited and restricted. So the scope is only applicable to companies with paid up capital of more than 2.5 million. So it excludes SMEs. All right. So we do have SMEs with, more than one company in the group as well. The other thing is that the restriction is only for the first 3 years after 12 months of commencing business. So instead of limiting it, it would be good if the government can allow an indefinite period for this, right? For the group relief. Anytime that any company in the group has a loss, you can use that loss to offset the profits by the other companies in the group before you pay tax on the net profits of the group. Okay. And two more things that is actually on tax cuts as well. So not only tax cut for the individual taxpayer, but also for corporations as well. We're proposing 25% of the tax payable. So if your tax payable is $1 million, give a tax rebate of 25%, so you only pay 750,000, right? So for taxpayers, for businesses that are affected by COVID, perhaps these are things that the government can consider, at least for these 2 years, right, to help businesses. And the last one is actually on corporate rescue, like I mentioned earlier. So if we can provide sufficient benefits or incentive for companies to go into this, I think this will be very helpful. Give them certainty that they can carry forward the losses from these companies that they're taking over, give them a tax deduction for the amount, for the money or the cost of acquiring these businesses, right? So these are the things, that I can think of that will, immediately meet the needs of businesses affected by COVID.
Theresa, we're facing a very interesting situation here. While we're talking more about how to stimulate the economy by putting more money into the hands of the rakyat, we're also looking at the situation where the government needs more revenue and broadening the tax-based system. With all these cuts that you were mentioning, it is in no doubt will help the rakyat because you're talking about more disposable income. But at the same time, aren't you also talking about reducing the tax income for the country? How do we manage these two, diametrically opposing philosophies here?
Yes, I think this is where we talk about going after the shadow economy. So if there is a lot to get from there, and that would be sufficient to to fund some of these, right? And instead of just putting money into the hands of taxpayers, this could be a better way, to support the businesses, right? Because part of our Prihatin Penjana packages, right, which cost so much, 305 billion, when our budget for last year was only 297, so it way exceeded that. And I'm sure this year we will have to, continue to spend more as well for these packages and so on, right? Unless the economy recovers quickly in the first quarter of next year. So I think it's a question of what you can do. So these initiatives that I mentioned, right? So some of these could be, you can limit it maybe to just these 2 years so that, there is a limit as to how long this is going to go, like tax cuts and everything, just for 2 years, right? To help businesses when, you see, the thing is, if you don't help them when they are in dire needs, some of these may end up closing shop and moving away.
Yeah, I mean, they're already closing shop.
Yeah, so there are many who have closed shop and moved away, yeah? But those that are existing, we need to help them so that they can survive this pandemic and continue to contribute, right, to our economy later on, right? Because once they are gone, that's it, right? So it would be better that we invest some money in helping these people to stay afloat this time during this pandemic, and hopefully, we are seeing that the worst is going to be over and the vaccines will be out soon, and and the economic recovery will pick up, right? And then, so it won't be too long. So giving them aid for 1 or 2 years, to me, I think it is a worthwhile investment.
Theresa, but for now, we have to draw this conversation to a close for the time being. We're still going to have you on Budget Night, and perhaps if you are kind enough to join us next week or the week after that, when when we can actually have you in person in the studio, I hope you can spend the time with us here as well. But for now, that was Theresa Goh, the tax partner of Deloitte Malaysia. We're going to have a continuous conversation on the budget throughout the entire week. Consider this as well as on my show Notepad. So stay tuned to watch us all the time. For this week, we're going to be bringing you the budget special on Budget Night as well, and it will be carried throughout the entire station.
Thank you. Bye-bye.